Hello there, Annette. It's good to see you.
It's lovely to see you as always. And wherever you are, thank you for joining us too. If you're anywhere but on Angel Heart Radio Facebook page, you might like to go over there because then you can join us with comments and questions. And when we're talking astrology, usually there are some questions, aren't there, Janet? And we welcome them,
We
Janet
do.
especially.
Yes.
Before we get into our topic today, which is talking about gorgeous Taurus and what it might be bringing us in April, I'd like to remind you that these shows and what is offered on these shows should never replace your legal, medical, nor professional advice, nor your own sound judgment. We're here to entertain you. We're here to maybe push your boundaries. And we'd like to think that, yes, we give you something to think about. And then, of course, you make up your own mind as to nay, whatever. Janet, you speak a lot of sense. And of course, you have the backing of what you see in how the planets and stars are aligning.
That's right. They're the guides, the mentors for what we're going to experience over a period of time. I get asked this a lot, Annette, about how can I think people think sometimes that planets, and it might even be the terminology that we use. We say things like, the moon rules Cancer, and then someone who's the sign of Cancer might think, well, then the moon rules them. So sometimes the choice of words that we use can be confusing, but it's not the planets that are causing anything for us, right? It's not like, you're doomed because you have a Scorpio Taurus opposition coming up, and you do. Just because I peeked at your chart earlier before we went on air. And so it's not that these characters are causing or forcing something upon you. They're really archetypal energies, or they represent archetypal energies, potentials, right, for expression. And when we look to the sky to find out what that might mean for us, we're really just kind of tapping into sort of an energetic flow. And when we can take that energetic flow and transpose it over someone's astrology chart, we can get an idea from what those energies represent, how they might be playing out in someone's chart. And then that
Mhm.
means how that might be playing out in someone's life. But it's
Right.
not, I think the problem that people experience sometimes is they think it takes away their free will.
Mhm.
And that certainly isn't the case, right? They feel like somehow it's destined to happen or fate is involved, but that's so not true. They're more like guides, guideposts along the
Sure.
way that help us understand what the natural cycle of time is bringing to us, because all of the planets move in natural cycles of time. They don't look at the calendar and go, "Oh yeah, today's March 24th, so we better behave this way." Right?
Right.
That's not what happens. They're moving on a time scale that makes is not mechanical by our charting of the calendar. Certainly, we can look at where they are based on a calendar or an ephemeris, our little tools that we use to help us determine where things are. But there's no predetermination as far as what will happen during a transit of a planet. So while today we're going to be talking about April's energies in Taurus because there's a lot of planets headed that direction, it doesn't mean that there's some sort of fated quality that will happen, or some event that is fated to happen that will
Mhm.
show up. But we can look certainly at a chart. We can look at what all the planets mean archetypically, and we can predict, like, what some of the themes are going to be during that period of time.
Right. Well, thank you for clearing that up. And it is important that we realize that we are living on the planet of choice, and that how we respond to anything that happens in our lives is totally up to us.
Yes, Yes, it is totally up to you because your free will is about how you're going to respond to the challenges or the opportunities, the relationship issues that do come up during a period of time. And sometimes we have transits that make things a little more conflict oriented or stir up the dirt from the bottom and bring it to the top. And that can create a different way for us to have to respond versus those other kinds of transits that are just an ease and a flow, like a summer breeze that's just blowing gently and cooling you down, but not making you cold. So we have to learn to, in some ways, take responsibility for how we show up in the face of the transits that we are experiencing.
Sure.
I'm being careful of the words I'm choosing because I don't want people to think that they're powerless in anything that we are talking about. And even, like in 2020, we had some pretty harsh transits all year long. Like every time we turned around, there was something else happening. But a lot of good things still happened in 2020 to a lot of people.
Sure.
So it's not a foregone conclusion that a difficult transit brings up horrendous difficulties. And it's not always a foregone conclusion either that good transits bring up good things.
Interesting. Now, Janet, we have some people joining us in the chat, which is fantastic. I'd love to know where these people are from. Gray and Sandra and Lacey, welcome, welcome, welcome.
Great to have you. And of course, any questions that you have about astrology or about your own charts, you can certainly put those in the chat, and Annette will graciously ferry them to me so that I can answer them. And we may even have some time to look at personal charts. We're certainly going to use Annette's chart for a moment because our dear Annette is a Scorpio, and opposite of the sign of Scorpio is Taurus. And since Taurus comes into focus quite powerfully in the month of April, I thought it was a fortuitous time for us to take a peek at your chart.
Well, thank you. And welcome, Pauline.
Hi, Pauline. She listens to my morning show. I don't know about Lacey and Gray and what was the other? Sandra. They could be part of my morning show. I don't know. Or they could be listeners from down under where you are.
Yes.
Yeah.
They can share with us their spaces where they are from, if they would like to.
Yes, please do.
It's an idea. That's the beauty of Facebook, isn't it, Janet? And the fact that we can use Zoom on so many different platforms that, hey, wow, we're reaching out. Sandra just turned 60. Welcome to the club, Sandra.
I'll be 60 this year too.
Wow.
Yeah. So she's from where? California?
California.
Hi, Sandra. Welcome.
Yes.
Well,
so. Oh, okay. She's just turned 60 and she's given me her details. March the 15th. 61.
I'm going to write these down real quick. 3/15 or 16?
Sorry, it's 15.
Of 1961. And what time?
Time in California, Porterville, California, at 4:12 a.m.
And what city in California did you say?
Porterville.
Okay.
We've got a real 60s club today because Pauline turns 60. She's in New York. Lucky girl.
It's the 1961 group. Or 60 or 61. Well, I guess it would have to be 61 if you're 60.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, fantastic.
Yeah. Well, so let's start talking about the month of April, and when we get some time here, I'm going to put Sandra's name down because I've got her chart now, or I mean, I'll look her chart up, but we have some pretty interesting things happening as we move into the month of April. And the reason we talk about April now, even though we're not even there yet, is because you and I, Annette, won't meet again until April in the midst of all
Yeah.
of this, you and I will meet on April 21st-ish, it looks like, or 22nd, your date. Yeah, the third. No, it'd be the 4th to 28th, right?
Right.
So these will all have been said and done. Will be, at the tail end of these transits. So in order to make sure people understand what's coming up, that's why today we're going to be talking about what is happening as we get into the month of April. Now, the first part of April doesn't change significantly. So it's not like you're going to wake up on April 1st, April Fool's Day, and be a fool because you realize that the whole world is turned upside down. Although, you know what? Every morning I wake up and the ground is beneath my feet, I'm really excited. Because things are so crazy sometimes. But slowly, as we start to move through the month of April, energies are going to begin to change. So first off, as we move into March, or not March, April, out of March and into April, we're still going to have the planet Mars, who's driving action in our lives, in the sign of Gemini. So there's still this potential for a lot of ideas to be exchanged with one another, for a lot of talking and sharing and conversation around topics of interest. And it doesn't have to be any specific topics, because Mars and Gemini will pick up a thread of something that is interesting and will follow it to its logical conclusion. And sometimes that may take a while, and other times it's like, oh, done with that topic. And I have a really great story about this one, because this month, from about halfway through the month, Mars has been in Gemini, and I'm a Gemini. So I'm always like this, but I hear the name of a book, it piques my interest, or the concept piques my interest, and I'm off and running. So I ended up with an Audible book and two reading books of the same author, Irvin Laszlo, because it interested me. It picked up my interest. And then,
Right.
of course, I start to weave that into the conversations I'm having with friends and with family members and people that I talk to on air, because I'm, saying, hey, this was a great book, read this book. So that's what happens while we have Mars moving through the sign of Gemini. We're picking up different ideas and we're sharing them with one another. Sometimes it can be innovative, and it can be something that, blows our minds as far as how it's possible that a new idea could work. So
Mm-hmm.
we stick with that energy for a bit as we move into the month of April. And as we get to about mid-month, we start to build energies in the sign of Taurus, where we already have the planet Uranus, right? He's been sitting there for a couple of years now, and he is a planet that brings about revolution or change,
Mm-hmm.
in a sort of an awakening manner. So we have Mars generating new ideas and innovation and conversation. And now we begin to see how we might be able to bring those into reality in the sign of Taurus, right? Taurus is the master builder. It's a sign whose feet are firmly on the ground, who is wanting to use things in useful, practical, down to earth sort of ways. I mean, just an idea up here, pie in the sky, isn't going to be satisfying in Taurus energy. We want to bring it into reality, right? We want to build it. We want to see if it's sustainable. We want to build it as a foundation, or have a new foundation being built. So as we begin to move mid-month, the inner planets, Venus, the Sun, Mercury, they're all going to start moving into the sign of Taurus, joining the planet Uranus. And I have a feeling that we're going to have some surprises and some interesting things happening as we move there. Now, I'm going to share my screen right now, if that's okay. Does anybody have any questions so far about the month that we need to deal with?
No, no. Pauline has given us her details as well. What I would like to remind people about, Janet, is that they can go to your website and
Mhm.
they can, if they haven't already procured a free chart, they can do so.
Absolutely. Free human design chart and a free
Yes.
astrology chart. And Pauline, I think I do have your information already. And Sandra, I will enter yours in. Although, that combination of things sounds familiar, so I'm wondering if you're someone I've done a reading for before.
Uh-huh.
So mostly because Porterville is, not that big of a town, and I
Oh,
remember this town. So let's talk about April's big news, shall we then? A stellium
absolutely.
in Taurus. Now, stellium may be a new word for some of you. Stellium is just a word that says we're building up a number of planets, usually 3 or more in one sign, in close proximity to one another. So the stellium for April is activated from April 19th all the way through May 3rd, with April 23rd being about the midway point, the strength of the highest strength of those planets coming together. And in this little cutaway here, this shows you, kind of visually what a stellium looks like. And you see this little symbol. This is the symbol for the sign of Taurus. And this is the symbol for the sun, for Uranus, for the black moon Lilith. Forgot to mention her. She will also be involved. Venus and the planet Mercury. And they are all within about 8 to 9 degrees of one another. So
Mhm.
when you put, if it was just one in there and maybe a second one moved into the sign, you wouldn't have too much drawing power to bring that stellium into play. But when you start putting 5 of them together, even though the sun is a little bit behind, in degrees, from say Mercury at 16 degrees, there's still a lot of power because now you're adding more and more planets. So we have a lot of focused energy in this particular sign. So that's kind of your definition of a stellium. Now, for those of you who are interested in, well, how does this affect me? Well,
Mhm.
everybody has Taurus somewhere in their chart. You don't have to be a Taurus, you don't have to be a Scorpio, you don't have to be in anything, because all of us have Taurus somewhere in our charts. And because of the close proximity of all these planets, they're likely all in the same house. In fact, the way that I do charts now, all signs take up one house in the chart. So in any chart that I'm going to look at, you're going to see all those planets in one sign and all those planets in one house, which just adds the intensity or the focus of that energy. So
Mhm.
when we're looking at the planets, then we have the sun, and the sun in a sign always shines a very bright light on the issues to do with that sign. When we're talking about Taurus, it rules our financial system, it rules the economy, it rules
Wow.
banking, right? And it rules uh, agriculture and how we deal with the earth. So, are we taking care of the earth? Are we having issues with agriculture or getting food from the fields to the market, or problems maybe in fertility in the ground, things like that? So, the sun shines a very bright light, and at least in the northern hemisphere at this time of year, farmers are out there planting, right? They're seeding the fields for this year's crops. In your part of the world, they're likely bringing in the crops, right? At this particular time, harvesting. So even though we are in different hemispheres of the planet, we still have this very earthy energy that the sun is pointing us to during this period of time. And as well, the sun in Taurus might bring up the connection that we have to our physical senses. So, sights and sounds and tastes, and the sense of smell. And I'm missing one: taste, sound, sight, hearing,
Touch. Oh.
touch. All of the senses are heightened during this period of time. And as well, we have this concept of values. In the sign of Taurus, it rules our self worth and our ability to be lovable. Do we see ourselves as lovable? Do we see ourselves as worthy? Are we? Do we have self confidence and self esteem? It's mostly about our worthiness, though. How can we do what we do out in the world, right? With a solid sense of self and of knowing our worth. And as well, then the sun here also starts to bring up our value system. Like, what do we value as a society? What do we value as a family? What do you value as an individual, as a community, a tribe, going out as a planet? What do we value? So it brings up uh, the concept of whether we are in resonance with what we state as our values, or are we out of resonance with our stated values. And it was interesting because I've never been to New York. So Pauline, if you've been to New York, hopefully you've been to the Statue of Liberty. As I was watching some show the other night, there was a person that was on Ellis Island, where the Statue of Liberty is, or Liberty Island, whatever they call that, and they were reading what's engraved at the base of Lady Liberty's statue, and it was incredible, the words that are there that welcome people to this
Mhm.
country. Bring us your tired, your poor, your teeming masses yearning to be free kind of language. And that's a stated value of this country. And yet, what's one of our biggest issues? Immigration. And
Mm.
yet it is exactly what we've always done, is be a welcoming beacon to people, not saying you had to be white, male people, but people, no matter what country that you were coming from. So it brings up an interesting possible thing about values, because that seems to be a hot button issue in our country right now, about people wanting to cross the borders. So when we're talking about our values, we have these stated values, but then we also have values that are more not not fully stated, but sort of that we all agree upon, like that feeding children is important, or that trafficking people is not a good thing, right? We have these things that we morals is what I want to call them, but that's not quite what I mean. That are our values. So the sun is
Mhm.
putting a lot of, you know, light, shining a very powerful energy out on all of those kinds of subjects as we move into the month of April. Now, Uranus is also there in the sign. And again, right, remember, this is about the banking system, the economy, our values, self worth, and senses. So, Uranus is bringing up these surprising things. It's an awakener. And remember how shocked we all were when we discovered last year that possibly one of the symptoms of COVID-19 was losing your sense of taste and smell, right?
Mhm.
An assault on the senses coming up without any warning, right? Sort of a surprise, here I am, a new
Yeah.
symptom that you've got to deal with. And then the Black Moon Lilith focus. Now, she's a mathematically contrived piece in this case. There is a Black Moon that is an asteroid, I believe it is. But we're talking about a mathematical connection here to where the shadow is for all of us. And for right now, so you have a personal shadow in your chart that tells us what you are personally afraid of, or kind of like what's back here kind of running the show, the fear, the core fear that you might have. Well,
Mhm.
right now, the Black Moon Lilith going through by transit in the sign of Taurus is showing us where we have lack consciousness, where we are victims of greed and selfishness, or are we learning lessons about how to distribute wealth more evenly. And so she's been bringing up the things that, for instance, people who are losing their jobs, or who are sitting, here paycheck to paycheck. And in this country, there was a big conversation around raising the minimum wage, and the Black Moon Lilith is bringing up these shadowy subjects, the ones that we don't always want to talk about, but they're running the show because they're underneath the surface, right? So
Mhm.
all of us are having to come face to face with our fears around abundance, having enough, having enoughness, right? And
Mm.
that can be enough opportunities, enough love, enough food, enough water. Anything that you can think of about enoughness is coming up during this period of time. Now, Venus, will also move into the sign of Taurus on April 14th. So she's sort of the harbinger. She goes in there first. She's like, Uranus has already been there. The black moon Lilith has already been there, but she's the first of the personal planets that actually gets into the sign of Taurus. And
Mm-hmm.
she actually rules the sign, right? She's the head mistress here. And she is always going to remind us about our lovability, our worthiness, our financial security, and our values. And are we living from our values, or are we saying one thing and doing something completely different? And then
Mm-hmm.
we have Mercury, the little messenger planet, also bringing his energy into the sign, depositing new messages perhaps with our consciousness about living our values and about our money and finances and all of that. Now, how does it affect us when we have this much going on? Well, for some of you, it might not affect you very much at all. But for some of you, it's going to be very effective, right? You're going to have, no matter what, in the house that you are experiencing this in, you're going to have these 5 planets moving through here. And you're going to have repercussions of this energy for a while yet, because even though the sun and Venus, black moon Lilith, and Mercury will get out of there by the end of April, Uranus will stick around, right? He's not going anywhere very fast. He has another 5 years to stay here in this sign. And so he is the catalyst in some ways for us to really recognize where we are out of alignment with our hearts, right? What we say and what we do, and where we're out of alignment with that. And the signs that are going to be most affected by this are going to be definitely Taurians. If you're a Taurus, all of this is piling up in your sign. When you look back at it, you're going to think that this month was an intense month. Doesn't mean it's going to be bad. No, not at all. It just means that these issues are going to be more hot button issues for you. You may be, raking in opportunities and having a great month, or you may see the opposite happening, money going out because your car broke and then you needed new this or you needed to have that. So, all of these things that are happening for Taurus are more acute because it's your own sign. Now, Scorpio is
Mm.
also affected because Scorpio is the sign exactly opposite. And all of the signs form an axis, right? Gemini's opposite is Sagittarius, Aries opposite is Libra, and Taurus opposite is Scorpio. So every sign has its opposite. And in your case, you're going to have Scorpio because you've got quite a few planets in Scorpio, those planets being affected by the opposition of planets that are going through Taurus. So that's going to be kind of like pulling you in 2 different directions, right? You're going to have to solve conundrums probably, Annette, and we're going to take a look at your chart and see how that's playing out. But certainly, it's a possibility that, you, because you're a Scorpio with planets in that sign, are going to be affected by this. If you're an Aquarian, yes, question.
Can I ask a question? When we have an opposite, what does that do with relationships? Are we drawn to opposites? Does it? I find it interesting because my late husband was a Taurus.
Often they say opposites attract, and it's the
Yes.
same in astrology. Often some of the best relationships are from opposite signs. So,
Uh-huh.
so yeah, and it's because there's a part of you as a Scorpio that is in resonance with Taurus energy, right? So
Uh-huh.
you're drawn to it. And the same thing for
Uh-huh.
any of the other signs that have that opposite sort of connection. There's something that is familiar that you're recognizing and are drawn by it,
Mm-hmm.
or you're drawing in people from that have the opposite sign as well. So that's true.
Cool.
That is very true.
Cool.
Um, okay,
Thank you.
so Taurus and Scorpio, you're both going to be affected, and as well Aquarius and Leo. Now, it's not at first exactly like right in your face as to why they're affected, but they are signs that are in opposition to one another, and they sit in a square relationship to both Scorpio and Taurus. And the squares and the oppositions in this case are through fixed signs, and fixed signs are more stable. They're more secure, they're more foundation oriented, but they also have a tendency to dig in those heels, to get stuck, to find themselves in a rut of sorts, or to become more rigid in their thinking or in their behaviors. So I dare say that Taurus, Scorpio, Aquarius, and Leo may be coming face to face with places in their charts or in their lives where they've gotten stuck, or where it seems that their rigidity isn't paying off. They're being forced almost to change in some way, to move
Mhm.
ahead in life in some way. To make those changes in an agreeable fashion makes this a whole lot easier than to dig in those very bullish Taurus hooves and stay stuck. So there's a lot of opportunity here for those four signs anyway, to break old patterns and to move ahead in some way. But it's going to have to also come through their being willing to release themselves from fear, right? The fear of change, most likely. Fixed
Mhm.
signs, they're not that happy about change. They like their little piece of the world and the way their little piece of the world is working. And why can't you all keep things the same way? Why do I have to change? So it's always interesting when we have the fixed signs involved, but they're the ones that are loyal and steadfast, and they stay the course. They don't give up very easily. So we need those qualities too in the world. But right now, the world seems very much on the cusp of a huge change, an evolutionary leap. So these are the places where we may have encrusted energy and we might need to move on in some way, shape,
Mhm.
or form. Now, the signs, any of the signs where you have planets between 7 and 16 degrees will also be affected in some way through a relationship. And when I say relationship, I mean it can be through a trine, a sextile, a conjunction. Well, it would be a Taurus or something if it was a conjunction, but sextiles and trines usually are easier flowing energies. So other signs might be, in the clear, but you could also
Mhm.
be any one of those signs, but you have planets moving through these degrees or in your natal chart in those degrees and also be affected. So, for example, in my own chart, I have Venus at 12 degrees of Taurus, and that means my Venus, my natal Venus, is going to be subjected to these planets that are crossing over her for the next foreseeable future. Does that make sense? I know that part's a little bit harder to
Yeah.
describe, but when we look at people's charts, I think you'll be able to see how that's playing out. And
Uh-huh.
then, because I don't want to leave out human design, because I absolutely adore human design,
Mhm.
I looked at what gate in human design would be affected by these planets, and it's the gate 24, which in quantum human design, which is through Karen Curry Parker, she's elevated the traditional human design language into quantum human design language. The gate 24 is now called the gate of blessings. And here is a gate, an area of our chart where gratitude is very prominent. So,
Mhm.
greeting any of things that are coming up in your life with an air of gratitude, right? Even if it's something that's a challenge, at least, acknowledging and being grateful for the stability that you have in your life to be able to rise up and meet that challenge. Or if
Mhm.
it's something awesome that happens, a windfall of money or opportunities that come in, to be in gratitude for those blessings that are coming in. In the old language, this was a gate called rationalizing. And there's a lot of rationalizing that can go on here in this gate, even still, even though we've renamed it. When we rationalize staying small, staying stuck, not moving, we rationalize that if I was meant to have more, I'd have more, right? We
Right.
compromise our
Mhm.
desires because if it was meant to be, wouldn't it be? And yeah, so we can get caught up there in sort of the rationalizing of why it is I don't have what I have, or why I don't have what I want, etc. All right, now, lest you all believe this is the only thing we have to talk about, let me disavow of that. I'm going to change the screen here for just a moment because
Yeah.
now we have a highly activated stellium. So this isn't just your run-of-the-mill stellium, right? We've had all kinds of stelliums throughout time, and I've not talked about them all that much, right? Why is this one different? This one is different because the planets here are anchoring a square, a challenge, to the planet Saturn, or shall I say Saturn is anchoring a square to all of the planets in Taurus. Now, Saturn and Uranus have been in this square for a while, right? Since January. So, and they're actually close together in this square all of 2021, and even I think into January 2022. So we are already in this titanic battle. You could probably see where I'm headed with this, between the old factions, or what was old and set in their ways, versus what is new, revolutionary, and forward thinking. It's almost like there's no middle ground, there's no moderate ground. It's either progressive all the time, or it's all conservative all the time. And that square creates these titanic struggles that we have to find the middle ground for. Now that's happening on a bigger world stage. It's happening, in the bigger collective unconscious, but it's also happening in our own personal lives in maybe not as profound a way. But I will bet you that we could all look into our lives and see where we have this struggle between wanting to keep things the way they were, wanting to do things the old-fashioned way, and the call to the future, right? The call to the future, the call to the past. And what do we have to do? Well, we have to come into the present moment. So while we have all of these planets that are piled up together, they are all being significantly challenged by the planet of duty and responsibility. So we all have to be responsible for doing our own work, doing our own processing of the old in us and the new, and what direction do we want to move in? Do you want to stay stuck, or do you want to move forward? If you're going to move forward, what do you have to do? And by the way, this isn't about throwing the baby out with the bathwater, right? We don't have to leave the past behind and pretend it never happened, but we have to be able to move forward with the best of the past because it sustains us. So we want to be sustainable. We want to be good stewards. We want to be resourceful. And in order to do that, we have to take some things with us from the past. And then we have to be able to move on to the future because our lives are ever changing. So hopefully everybody gets that. You're going to have that aspect playing out in your life. And actually it's activated all year long. This is just another iteration of it right now, where more planets are piled on one end.
Well, don't they say, Janet, that the one constant in life is change?
Right. That is true. One constant in life is change, but the one thing that we can always guarantee is that there are people that don't want change.
Sure.
Right? They're the ones that are backpedaling. And we all do it. We all do it in some ways. I mean, there are some things that I will totally embrace and just love on and love that forward movement. And then there are other things where, like, give up sugar. Do I really want to do that? Do I have to do that? And even though I know it's absolutely the right thing to do, it's so hard to let go of things that you love sometimes. That's a minor thing in the big fish in the sea, but somehow we're all dealing with things like that. Yeah. So hopefully if you have questions out there about this, that you are letting Annette know. Annette.
Yes.
Can I bring up your chart now?
Absolutely.
Let's do it because yours is so beautifully wonderful. Everybody's charts are beautifully wonderful, so don't get me wrong. It's not that I think yours is just best in the world. But right now, for my purposes, it is because, let's see, do I have it? There it is. Because of the nature of the way your chart sets up. So let me share my screen. Yeah, go ahead.
Absolutely. Now, both myself and I take it as Anaya have put up your website because Sandra was asking about human design, and we said, well, go to Janet's website, living dash or hyphen astrology.com,
Yes.
www.living-astrology.com, and there people will find lots of information, and they too can request a human design chart like what
Absolutely.
you're showing there.
Yeah. And well, this is your astrology chart. But
Uh-huh.
a human design chart looks like a body in a graph, and it comes with a report, a little, 9, 10 page report to describe it a bit. And it's a beautiful system. I love human design, but what I
Mm-hmm.
really love is how we can blend human design um, and astrology and other wisdom traditions, the I Ching, the Jewish Kabbalah, Eastern astrology, and we can create a more holistic and esoteric vision of who we are energetically by bringing these systems together. And so in my morning show, I do this, and in talking with you on a monthly basis, we are often incorporating both astrology and human design, even the gene keys at times we're talking about. So bringing the systems together in some way gives us the bigger picture. We start to really see the coherence in everything. So it's not like, just some people 10,000 years ago decided, oh yeah, astrology, let's look at the stars and make all this stuff up. It's not
Mm-hmm.
that at all, because it correlates so beautifully with the other systems.
Right.
Yeah, it's like magic.
Jacqueline Lopez has joined us, and she says that you are an amazing human design and astrology teacher,
Thank you,
which we
Jacqueline.
are having evidence of today. So thank
Yeah.
you, Jacqueline. Thank you,
Yeah.
Janet.
And I know why Jacqueline is totally interested in this, because the focal point of all this energy comes on April 23rd, which just so happens to be her birthday. And actually, I have like 3 or 4 listeners in the morning whose birthdays are on April 23rd. And it's so funny because all of them, it's like they hear that date and they're like, what's going to happen? So it's good to know that information, to know that level of your own chart, so that you're
Mhm.
aware. And that's what I strive to do with people, is to give them the tools so that they can use their own chart, so that when I'm telling them something that's happening, they know, oh my gosh, that's where my sun is, or oh my gosh, I have a lot of planets in Taurus.
Right.
The
Mhm.
not the knowing, the knowledge of oneself is priceless, right? So
Absolutely.
So let's
Hmm.
orient you to this chart, because this may look a little different than charts I've done for you in the past, Annette, because I'm now using a system called whole sign astrology. And
Right.
essentially what that means is whatever it is that your rising sign is, and yours happens to be in Sagittarius, we move Sagittarius 0 degrees to the ascendant, to the 9 o'clock position. Then the whole of the first house is in Sagittarius, and then the whole of the second house is in the next sign, and so on around the bend, instead of cutting houses in half or in
Uh-huh.
thirds sometimes, because sometimes you get these whacked out charts and it's really hard to tell what's going on because of the way the energies are, being distributed. Well, this way
Mhm.
I can see that in Scorpio, which is right here, Scorpio is the home of Venus, Saturn, the Sun, and Mercury in your chart,
Right.
right? And let's put, if I could, well, let's see if I can do this, because sometimes I'm good at this and other times I'm so not. But let's see. Yes, I have a bigger pen today. So if we look at all of these planets here, well, look at that.
Mm.
That's not half bad. So here is Taurus. And here are all of these planets that are in Taurus, and that puts them in an opposition to planets that you have in the 12th house in the sign of Scorpio. Can everybody see
Right.
that? You sort of see that they're opposite of one another.
Mm-hmm.
Now, let's look at Taurus first, because Taurus on the 6th house is conferring great health on you, right? It's giving you sturdiness, it gives you durability, it gives you an ability to really be healthy. right? Given that
Mhm.
you have a good environment that you find yourself in, that you are taking care of yourself, then you have sort of a sturdiness about you. It
Mhm.
doesn't mean, and that, I mean, that's not derogatory. It's like you
No.
have, this good, you're blessed with good health. But all of these planets are now moving through the sign that is in your health sector. So it
Right.
not that you're doomed to have health challenges. That's not it at all. But it does maybe raise the bar a little bit about self-care. Are you
Mhm.
taking care of yourself? Are you making sure you're getting enough sleep, enough sunshine, enough water, enough, anything, right?
Right.
Taking good care of yourself. You have no planets here in this sign. And that's a good thing because these planets aren't conjuncting any other planet here. So it's not bringing up or triggering necessarily a health issue. Now, this is also a house that rules the work environment. So who you work with, where you work, um, who are employees or who are the people you work for, and what's that environment like? Is it toxic? Is it healthy? Is it wonderful? Do you love it? Do you work or whatever, right? So are you working at home? Are you working in an office? Those kinds of things. So it takes up the environment of your work, the people
Mhm.
that you are in relationship with at work, your health of your body, and as well, it takes up the idea of service. How are you sharing of your gifts and your talents? Right. So all of that's playing in your sixth house, and it's opposing the planets up here. And all of these planets are in Scorpio. It's kind of funny because Taurus energy is about self worth and being worthy.
Mhm.
Scorpio planets are about self mastery. So,
Ah.
what in your unconsciousness, because this is the house of the unconscious, what patterns are you perceiving that are up in your face, that need to be challenged or worked through? What's covering up your light? Because it's time to uncover all of the
Mm.
light and let it shine. And what fears or blocks or limitations are in that house. But also, how are you sharing of your gifts and talents from over here to the collective conscious out here, to the collective? Let's just call it the collective. So
Mhm.
this would seem to be a time for you to maybe, take a look at how you share of yourself. Are you sharing too much? Are you not sharing enough? Is it just right, but I want to share some new things? So that's
Mhm.
kind of the conversation for you around this particular time period. Now, just for fun, that seems funny, but just for fun, let's take a look at where Saturn is transiting, because remember I said there's a square. Well, that's not such a straight line, but you can kind of see that there's a square here, and the square from Saturn to the planets over here is happening from the third house in your chart to the sixth house in your chart. So I'm wondering if there isn't maybe some new thing that you're learning, some new skill, some new program, something new that you want to share in a sort of teaching capacity with others, because that would
Mhm.
certainly be possible. Something that you want to speak to that you haven't spoken to about or spoken about before, those kinds of
Oh.
things.
Mhm.
That's what's coming up for you.
Cool.
Yeah.
Thank you, Janet.
Does any of that sound or resonate with you?
Well, it does, yes. And I was told last year that there'd be some opportunities with my move, new opportunities. So, yeah. Oh,
And
how
that-
exciting.
Indeed. Okay. Any questions out there that I need to answer? If not, I'm going to go to people's charts.
Okay, that would be very good. Yes, let's go to,
All
is
right.
it?
Let's look at Sandra. Hold
Yes.
on. Let me go. I've got to find her chart first. So just one moment. Uh, Sandra, does Sandra did she post her last name so I can see if I've got her in here already?
Sandra, Gean Boyd, Boyd.
Mm, okay. Okay. So, okay. Nope, 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 nope. My computer's screaming at me. So hold on. Let me add her information in real quickly, and then we can look at her.
You are so good at multitasking, Janet.
Yeah.
You are incredible.
I'm not sure how I tricked you into thinking that that's true. And let's see, she was born at 4:12 a.m. in California, Porterville.
And Sandra happens to love Black Moon Lilith.
Ah, so Sandra, let's see here. I'm going to pull your chart up, and I used the last name Boyd. I missed what Annette said
Oh,
originally. So if that I'm wrong, I apologize, but that's what I heard. So that's what I got. I can change it if you want. Um, Now I'm going to pull up your transit chart, and I'm actually going to date the transit chart for the 23rd of April. And the reason I'm doing that is because right now, if I were to pull up your chart for everything we just talked about, the only planets you would see in Taurus are literally Uranus and the Black Moon Lilith, because it hasn't been built up yet. So let me share my screen now with Sandra's chart there. There we go. So, wow, Sandra, look at all of those fun planets. So let's do just a quick sort of orientation. All of the planets on the inner wheel here are where they were when you were born. And on the outer wheel, this is where they will be on April 23rd. And here we see, here's Taurus down here. Oops, that was not what I meant to do. See where multitasking got me? What I meant to do is to get my little drawing pen out. So here we have the Sun, Mercury, Venus, Uranus, the Black Moon, Lilith, all transiting through your fourth house of home and family, traditions, ancestry, genealogy, um, sort of the history of your lineage. And as well, this also rules the more mundane things like real estate or property that you own or property that you want to buy or sell, that type of thing. So for you, Taurus energy is really in an area of your chart that might be speaking to changes in literally in the home. And if we look across the way, we can see that you have Neptune in the sign of Scorpio, which we all would in 1961. And then we have that opposition from these planets over here to your natal Neptune. That didn't occur to me even in my own chart, funny thing. Um, Yours is a little more exact than mine is. I think Neptune is retro. Yeah, it is retrograde. So it was at 8 degrees in mine, but 11 in yours. So that puts it smack in the middle of all of these planets. And there may be something murky going on, something that you're not clear about. And, I've got to bring this up because I know what our ages are. And it might be like, is there something that you are working through around uh, retirement or older age? God, I hate to use that term, but getting older and maybe managing finances. Maybe it's dawning on you that you're not set for that, or maybe it's dawning on you that you've done a good job of managing that. Maybe you can retire early, if only, right? Or what do I want to be as I retire? Because the planet up here is in the 10th house of career or your authority, how you authentically show up in the world. And then all of these planets in Taurus down here. Uh, the fourth house even could be the house of retirement or old age, and how are we set up for those older years in our lives. So those might be the primary things that are up for you. If we look at where the square to Saturn would be, Saturn is in your first house. I don't know. Maybe I don't know you, Sandra, and it's hard for me to get feedback from you, but maybe you could let Annette know through the chat there.
she
Because,
is.
because,
Sandra's saying she's looking for a new place to live as we speak.
perfect. So that bodes well then for April, because April is always a really good month to really, find property or find new homes as we get into spring. I'm assuming you're in the Northern Hemisphere here. But the other thing that is going on that's so tricky here is that for a while now, let me see, since December 21st of 2020, you've been undergoing a revolution or a change in your own personal self. So if I were to say the words I am, you're likely, and then an underline because there's a blank, there's likely something new that you're bringing into your awareness about who you are as you're claiming mastery, perhaps, or
Well,
your
guess what?
what?
Sandra's just finished a Reiki teacher training.
Aha! See, so it works, right? Astrology works. We can see
There you go.
what's happening here. And here's the Black Moon Lilith, just in case people, because she had said she loved the Black Moon Lilith. So we're looking at a 4-degree Black Moon Lilith in Leo, whose issue is often about change, resisting change. And that's a funny one, I think, because of being a Gemini. I love change. Usually I'm very adaptable that way. But sometimes there's just this little stick in my craw about change, and it comes up there. Plus, there are ego issues that also we could speak about here. But for the most part, we were here to talk about that Taurus stellium. And it would seem that the force is with you in this one as you start to move toward changing your environment or your home. So,
Okay, Sandra moved to Oahu. I thought so because she said aloha earlier. So Sandra moved to Oahu November 2019.
mhm.
She's all by herself, away from all friends and family.
So maybe, Sandra, what you're trying to do is maybe relocate to a place where you can reestablish a community or a family. I don't know if you're going to stay in Hawaii or not, but it's important for you to have family around you, or at least to look at creating a family. You know, family doesn't have to be the blood relatives. It can be the people that you live around, you know, that you're in community with, friends and so forth.
Yeah,
So,
so Sandra's saying she has taken a deep dive inward.
yeah,
Absolutely.
Saturn driving through that first house in her chart would definitely bring that up. And Saturn will be there for likely another 24 months, so 2 years. So it's not, yeah, it's in the sign of Aquarius for 27 months. He moved in there in December. So what was that? Maybe 3 months ago, 4 months ago. So yeah, so you still have some time to work through this restructuring of yourself and who you are and your identity, and just make sure that you're moving toward the truth of who you want to be, your authentic self, and not what you think the world wants you to be.
That's a big one, isn't it, Janet?
I think so. I think so. Yeah.
Your friend and mine, Robbie Holtz, will be with me next week, and we're going to be talking about self-acceptance because it's a biggie.
Definitely a biggie. Absolutely. And you just reminded me when you said her name that I need to have her on my show. I know she has a new book, and
Yes.
yeah, I was going to talk to her about that. Thanks for the reminder.
There you are. The universe at work. I love it.
Indeed, indeed. So I know we're getting short on time here. Is there anybody else that absolutely had to have me take a look at their chart or answer a question for them?
No, Sandra is very grateful. She's
You're welcome.
very, very grateful. I think, Janet, it's an opportunity to say to all of the lovely people who are either with us in the chat on Angel Heart Radio Facebook page, or who simply are listening at any stage, that yes, you have a program every Monday to Friday,
Monday
American
and Friday.
time.
Monday and Friday. I don't do, yeah, it's on Mondays and Fridays now.
That's right, yes.
Yeah.
American time, which happens to equate to Tuesday to Saturday in Australia. And I also wanted to reiterate your website, because people who might have been joining us for the first time or are hearing this for the first time might be drawn to have a look at your website and to take up the offer of a free human design chart, or as you said, astrology chart, which is very generous of you. So your website is www.living-astrology.com.
Very good. Thank you. Thank you for sharing that.
And your show, people can find you
On my Living Astrology YouTube channel. I'm broadcasting there on Mondays and on Fridays at my time zone, 8 a.m.
Oh, I
Pacific
see
time.
what you mean. You've well done. You've slowed it down because you were incredible. You were doing it every day.
Monday through Friday. And then just at the end of the year and up until just like this week, I was jammed with readings at the same time that I'm trying to write a book for myself and participating as a writer in another person's book. So it was like I got slammed and was overwhelmed. So I had to drop down the number of days. It was crazy.
Right.
Yeah.
So
So
very good. Mondays and Fridays. I'm glad you listened, Janet, because sometimes we can get slammed and we ignore it, and then we get slammed big time.
right. And in my human design, I have a lot of energy for perseverance and endurance. And I found myself tapping into that energy. And it's not necessarily the energy I'm meant to tap into. I can tap into sustainable energy, but pushing yourself to stay in a situation is not how that energy was meant to be used. And I realized that when I started sort of just not being able to get up on time in the morning, and I'm like, what is wrong? Well, I was doing way too much. So yeah, but thank you. That was a big change for me to do.
And you were talking about that today. Sometimes we don't want to change, do we? And yet we're pushed. And sometimes then it becomes a shove. I'm glad you read the signs.
I think there's sometimes a fear that we might lose something if we let go, or if we don't keep doing the things that we've been doing. I know that I thought, oh my God, I'm going to lose my listenership. I'm going to lose people's attention. They're not going to remember who I am. I mean, I know that doesn't sound logical, but that's what was going through my mind all of these times. I can't stop doing this because, right? But it was the right thing to do. So when I finally made the decision, I was like,
yeah, and that is so important too, when we finally get it and it's like, the shoulders feel lighter.
I know, instead of them up under my ears, they were right where they belong.
Well, thank you for giving us your time today. And I'd like to thank our viewers, and especially those in the chat room, because you really added to the program today. And may we all be aware of whatever is in our lives and be grateful for the challenges as well, because the challenges teach us heaps. So,
indeed, they do.
Yeah. Thank you, everybody. And
thank you, Annette. Thank you for what you do out in the world, for having us wonderful guests on your show. We love you.
Thank you. Isn't it wonderful when we spread the love? So
Indeed.
Everybody, let's do that more and more each day, especially to ourselves. Thanks for joining us.
See you next month.